All right, so thank you for joining, guys and gals. This is a Atlanta WordPress Meetup. We're recording it. We're gonna put it on YouTube later, and I'll put it on Meetup. I'll put the link on the Meetup site, and I'll just hand it over to Micah. I figure you don't need a presentation or an intro or anything. This is Micah, the developer. So it's all you, man.
Awesome. So obviously the topic, AI tools with WordPress. We'll be talking about how we can use AI to directly not just interact with a site, but to actually have the AI do things on a site and what the implications of that are. So quickly figure out how to get to the next screen. Here we go. So here's what we're going to be covering. We're going to talk about how AI actually does work inside of WordPress, give you some examples of things that you can actually try. We have a setup steps that we'll walk through together as part of a demo, and then safety checklist towards the end. So this is kind of the familiar scene I think most people usually think of when they think of using AI with WordPress. Is they'll open ChatGPT, they'll copy some content in and be like, hey, rewrite this or do this thing. And then they'll end up copy pasting it back in. And then, there's kind of this back and forth between the WordPress site and the AI chat. So we want to avoid that. And there is a better way, which is obviously to use AI directly within WordPress. But it's very slow, very repetitive. And if we go that approach of copy pasting things, then the AI is blind to anything, any context that you don't provide it, right? And of course, we have the potential to make little mistakes as we're doing that, and it doesn't really scale very well. So that being the old way, the new way would be to open up your AI assistant, ask it a question. It can look at your site, see what's going on. It can draft a post or whatever you need to do. And then you can kind of review and approve it and move on without necessarily having to be the carrier pigeon that translates things from one place to the next. So when we're talking about tools in WordPress, we're talking about a standard that is called MCP. Some of you may have heard of it. It's Model Context Protocol is what it stands for. And it's basically, at this point, a universal adapter between AI assistants and WordPress or other tools that you might use. So for example, in relation to your WordPress site, you might also find an MCP that would let you connect to Google Analytics. And then you could say, okay, well, look at my analytics, figure out which posts need to be optimized and help me optimize them. Those are the kinds of things that you can do. And obviously, the more connections that you have, the more powerful the AI is in the sense of what it can do, but also potentially more security risks, which we'll talk about. Originally, Anthropic, or the company behind Claude, is the company that started Model Context Protocol. But at this point, other AI platforms have adopted it, and open source systems use it. And so it's not a proprietary lock-in at this point. It's kind of a standard. You don't really have to know too much about it, but if you want to know a little bit of how it works, you basically have a host, which is the application where you're talking to the AI. So in this case, it could be Claude, ChatGPT, or any other AI tool. And then you have the client, which is actually part of the tool that you're interacting with, right? It actually handles the MCP translation behind the scenes to communicate with the platform that you're connecting with, or the server. So whether that's Google Analytics or WordPress or something else, those are the three things. And then the data and what was actually done is returned back to the host so that you actually see in the chat interface what was actually done. So there's three things that MCP gives us. One is tools, the other is resources, and the other is prompts. Now, I will say most MCP connection or MCP servers is what they're called. They tend to usually focus primarily on tools, but resources and prompts are also part of the MCP spec and can be used if they're there. Idea is tools allow you to do things, resources allow you to read information, which you could also do via tool, but resources have a special place for that. And then prompts are, for example, if I were to create a WordPress MCP, I could have custom prompts that I could embed into that tool so that others could use it. So where does this MCP server live? Usually you will start by using it with a local site that you might have set up locally if you're a developer. You can also connect to a remote site as well. And so today we're actually going to be showing this working on an actual live. And when I say actual live, it's not a real site, it's a test site, but it's live to the world. You could go to that site and show you how this works and how to set it up. So WordPress is a good fit for this because we already have APIs in WordPress, and MCP is just a connection that can leverage those kinds of things. We have all of our plugin ecosystem and kind of standard ways of doing things in WordPress, which can contribute to better interactions and interoperability between various tools. And of course, there's always plenty of things that we need to do to maintain a site, to keep up with content, and all those things. So we have something called the care quadrant here. So there's the typical types of actions that you might take in WordPress using AI. One is content focused. If you wanted to create a post, for example, or optimize for SEO, those kinds of things. We have admin tasks where you could list users on your site or things like that. Reports. So this could be, for example, you're running WooCommerce and you want to get a report of latest sales or something like that. And then for engagement, you can kind of get a feel for, how people are interacting on your site. So what comments have come through? Do I have any form submissions? Those kinds of things. So here are some actual kind of examples. Find all my posts from 2022 that mention Gutenberg and suggest refresh titles and better SEO approach. Check what plugins haven't been updated in the last 90 days and see if any of them have vulnerabilities. And again, in an AI world, staying on top of those WordPress updates and things like that are going to be very important. And so things like this that can help you identify what you might be running that hasn't been updated and is vulnerable is a good thing to do. Reports like summarize this week's scheduled posts and their status in the Yoast SEO plugin. Engagement, draft a polite on-brand reply to any comment that's been waiting for more than 48 hours without a response. So with that, we're going to kind of jump into the hands-on piece and get started. You will probably want to, here, actually, I think I have a link handy. So I'm going to throw in the chat. Quick link, but I also have a QR code here if you want to do it. So this, my gift to you today is a MCP plugin that you can install that should make this easy to work with, or as easy as I can make it. There's maybe one step that might be a little tricky for some people, but I think it'll make it a lot easier. So this is a plugin that I've built that enables the MCP functionality and makes it easy to know how to configure it in various scenarios. And it can also do some logging. So this is kind of our setup process that we're going to go through. First, we're going to choose our AI host. And because Anthropic is the company that actually created MCP in the first place, the way that we're doing this today is we're actually going to be using the Claude desktop application. So if you have a Claude account, or maybe you've already downloaded the desktop app for Claude, you should be in a good place. Otherwise, I do recommend, if you want to follow along, you can, set up your account. And I believe, you can use a lot of these features at the free level. You just may be limited at some point with the AI interactions. And then make sure you install the desktop application so that you can get started. So I believe, let's see here, if I were to pull up Claude, let's see, I think yeah, here we go. So here's a link if you're interested in downloading the Claude apps, or there's a mobile app, there's some stuff for Chrome and various things, but the Claude desktop app is what you're after there. And then, well, actually, I have a slide for each of these, so we're going to kind of walk through that. So again, with your AI tools that you may or may not already be using, like I said, MCP is a kind of a standard, so there's a lot of different options out there. And again, I'll just be demoing Claude for the reasons already mentioned, but you can actually, figure out how to do this with other applications as well, once you kind of get a basic understanding of how it works. So the next thing is to just equip your WordPress site with the actual functionality, the MCP tooling functionality. So step one is to download that MCP plugin. Oh, it says official. That should go away. And then we're going to have to create an application password for your WordPress user. And that will allow that particular user to be the user that AI can interact with on the WordPress site. So anything that user can do, that's what the AI can do as well. And of course, once all that's set up, we also need to make sure that our AI tool, like Claude, is actually connected to the site. So we are going to go ahead and actually go through these steps. And so, well, actually, I think I've got it over here. So step one, download the plugin. That's the bit.ly link there. It should just download the zip directly onto your machine. And you can install that and activate the plugin. The plugin is called WordPress MCP. And we're going to go ahead and go to the settings page here. So when we go to this settings page, it will give us some help here with setting up access to the site. Now, like I said, the tricky and kind of technical piece here of setting up the MCP is really just making sure that the configuration is put into Claude or whatever tool you're using correctly, so that it can communicate with the WordPress site. So because I'm using the desktop app, I'm going to be using this configuration right here. Now, this is literal copy paste. I can paste this whole snippet in, and the only thing I have to do is just make sure that I have a application password, and I replace this text here with that. If I'm running a local site, I can check this box and it will reload the page real quick, and it'll update the configuration to add some additional stuff so that it'll work well if you're a developer and are working on a site on your local computer. But we don't actually need that right now because, like I said, we have the site that we're on is actually a live site. This is a real URL that you can go to. And so we're going to click this link here. That's going to open up our user profile. You can see that I've actually already created an application password. It's called Claude. Basically, you're on your user profile in WordPress. That's where this lives. So for whatever user you're setting up, or I should say for the plugin, when I click that link, whatever user I'm logged in as, that's where it'll take me to set up the application password. Later, we'll talk a little bit about security and how you might want to have a specific user for the AI to use. And you can set that up and then log in as that user and then do this same process of setting up the application password. But basically, you give it a name and you hit add. And what it'll do is it'll give you the password. So you can copy that password and then it will work for interacting with the site. So that said, we would basically copy this configuration and replace that application password. So to do that in Claude, we will come over here. And so we have down here, we have a settings. So we're going to settings. And you do actually go to developer down here at the bottom. And then edit config. Like I said, this is the most technical part, but we're going to make it as easy as we can. So that's going to open up a little window here where we can see that we have our desktop config. I have my real desktop config over here, and I've sanitized this one because I don't want to give keys or anything out for anything that I've configured otherwise. But basically, we're just going to open that configuration file. And so technically we have already put some stuff in here, but like I said, if you're starting fresh and you've never configured any MCP before, you can literally just copy this. And, if you've got a bunch of other stuff in here, you might want to retain that. Basically, the important part here is where it says MCP servers. You can see there's indentation, so this is all related. And then we have something called My Site, which is the configuration that looks a lot like what we had there. So theoretically, we could just copy paste over everything and it'd be fine. But there are probably some settings there that might have gotten wiped, but nothing that we would miss too bad. So anyway, so this is that. And again, we have to have that application password, which I believe we have here. So we're going to save that. So we've saved that. And what we're going to do, in order for Claude to pick up the integration, we have to restart it. So I'm going to actually quit Claude and give it a second here. And then we will start it back up. And then if we come back over to settings and we go to developer, we can see that WordPress, our configuration that we just set up, is in here and it says running, which is exactly what we want. If there was some sort of problem, we could hit view logs and we could paste those logs into AI and have it help us figure out what might be going wrong. But in this case, because we use the configuration exactly as it is, it's all working fine. So that means that we can start a new chat. I'll just hide this. And I'll say, tell me about my WordPress site. And it is going to look for tools. It's found this get site info tool. So we're just going to allow that. And again, this is the AI with MCP protocol. the AI is going to ask you before you allow a tool. So a good general rule of thumb when you're allowing or disallowing tools is to, well, if it's trying to do something you don't want it to, you would just deny. If it is a read-only action, where it's trying to read what posts you have or see what plugins are active or things like that, that's a read-only action. I would hit always allow. But you do have the option, if you click here, to do allow once. So if, for example, you're deleting a post, but you don't want to give the AI the ability to delete any post it thinks it should be able to delete, you can just allow it to do it the one time, and then it will have to ask you the next time it wants to delete a post. So that's an extra security layer there that's built in to make sure that the AI doesn't go off the rails without your permission. So in this case, it's actually fetching settings. So this is a get, which is a read-only action. So we're going to always allow. And so it's telling us that our site is Bean There Cafe, a local coffee shop in Snellville, Georgia. And it's telling me what the URL is, the tagline, admin, WordPress version, time zone. You can see the time zone is actually Europe/London. And it's suggesting that we maybe update it to our local time zone. It's telling me about the theme and some of the notable plugins that are installed. So clearly we have this interaction happening. Now, if we pop back over here, for kind of auditing purposes, I like to have an activity tracker type plugin on a site that will usually keeps track of who logged in, what content they changed, whether they added or removed plugins or whatnot. But here I've added a feature into this plugin where it will do tracking of the activity. So if you have one of those types of plugins and something happens and you're trying to figure out if a user deleted a plugin or if maybe the AI deleted the plugin, this will actually, for security reasons, it doesn't log lots of information. It logs just enough that you could cross-reference and figure out what exactly happened there. But we're going to enable this feature, and that is going to show up down here once we interact some more. So let's try and update our time zone to the local time zone. And again, it's already mentioned what that suggestion is. So it is telling us what the correct time zone is, and it has the tool to update. Now, again, update is a write interaction. So we're just going to allow it once for now so that it's not willy-nilly changing our settings in WordPress. And so now it's updated that. So if we were to go to our general settings, we should see that the time zone is now New York. And then if we come back to our WordPress MCP, we can see that it called update general settings. It was my user that did that because that's the user that we set up to have that permission. And it was successful, took 3 milliseconds, and it was done at exactly this timestamp. So again, if you're running some other activity tracker plugin, you can see what cross-reference these things. So let's see, does anybody have anything specific that they want to test or try? If you want to suggest something in the chat there, we can try it here. But one good thing to, especially if you're working with a new kind of MCP server or collection of tools, is to know what the tools are. So summarize all the tools available to me for this WordPress site. So this is going to, as part of the MCP tooling, basically there's kind of this protocol where the first thing it does is it asks, hey, what can you do? And it will give it a list of tools that says, hey, here's all the things you can do, and here's how you use the tools. So what it's doing right now is it's saying, okay, let me just fetch that list of tools again, and I can kind of give you a summary of what all this can do. So this is what all our plugin, the MCP plugin, can do. So it can change site settings, which we've already done. As you can see, it updated our time zone. We can work with posts and pages and custom post types, media, comments, users, taxonomies, plugins, themes, and it actually works with REST API. And if you enable it, it can actually do WordPress CLI calls. So very powerful. And this REST API piece is actually key, because what that means is if I'm running WooCommerce, whatever WooCommerce APIs are available, they become tools that I can then use. So what WooCommerce things can you do?
I think Joe had a question that I think you're kind of answering. Can this do other types of things like then search and install tools? So it looks like you just answered that question. So
yeah, so these are all the types of things it can do. And so here we can see that there's WooCommerce endpoints, list products, list orders, create a product, list coupons, and things like that. So let's try and do something here. So what plugins are on my site? And so we are going to allow. All right, so we have 12 plugins, 7 of them are active. So we got WooCommerce and some Yoast plugins and Jetpack and WP Forms, Yoast, our plugin, and then some inactive plugins. So let's say, and just to validate, let's just go to the plugins page so we can see that list. And again, these are all the plugins. Let's say we wanted to activate the Bluehost plugin, but we wanted the AI to do it. Activate the Bluehost plugin or plugin. Thankfully, AI can get around my spelling mistakes. So again, this is a thing you may not want done all the time, so we're going to just allow it once. And so now it says the plugin's active. So clearly, if we reload the page, we should see the Bluehost plugin be active, which it is. And it can actually install plugins as well. But let's say write let's say draft a new post titled Goodbye World. And make it have at least 300 words of content.
we'll see if it fixes the typo.
Yeah. Let's see. So it wants to add a post again. We're just going to allow that once. All right. So it created it and kept your spelling as is, since it's just a draft. So it did note my misspelling there. It's got 350 words. Want me to fix the typo, publish it, tweak the content, etc. So let's just go take a look at what it actually did. I'm sure we could just ask the AI, what does the post say? But I always like to see it in action here. So here it is, Goodbye World. There's a moment in every coffee lover's journal when a single cup changes everything. And so you can see that it actually knows the context of my site because we had asked it what the context of my site was. And so it tailored the post to be relevant to the content here. And again, we can see doesn't have the E in there. So if we jump back over here, fix the spelling and publish. And again, it wants to update the post. That's a write action. We're just going to allow it once for now. And again, if you're working with a local site, you don't have to be so stringent about what you allow once or allow always. You can just allow always on a local site where it doesn't really matter because it's, yeah. Okay, so it's published. So we'll jump back over here and we can see that it's a draft. Goodbye without the E, reload the page. And now it's goodbye world. And it is a actual post now. And it is classified as uncategorized and has comments and whatnot. So that is an example of some of the things you can do. And again, it's really your creativity for the most part as well. Let's see.
We got one question from Ron. It says, can it troubleshoot error log entries? And I know I use Claude Code to do everything, so I'm actually not sure if you can do that with this.
My tool my plugin has a tool to read the error logs, assuming you've enabled the error log function in your config file in WordPress config. If that's enabled, then yes, it'll be able to read it. I don't think it's enabled on my site. Well, this is read only, so we're going to allow always. Yeah, I may actually need to update that, but yeah, you can give it access to the logs, and I tested this earlier. I thought I had done it correctly, but anyway, I literally built this yesterday, so I can fix it. That's the nice thing about building with AI. It also makes it easy. So yeah, so we can get that updated, but yeah, so the nice thing about working with AI, especially when you give it the ability to close the loop on things like, tries to do something, maybe it didn't work out, something went wrong, giving it the ability to look at the logs, see what went wrong and what can be done about it. Maybe it says, oh, it looks like the errors with this particular plugin. Let's deactivate that plugin and try again. So it has that capability to do those types of things. But the beauty of this is that just because we have a specific set of tools doesn't mean we're just limited to that, because we have some foundational tools like the REST API, where if I install any new plugin that has an API, that becomes available to me as a tool that I can use with this plugin. What can it not do? Well, what can it not do and what do you not want it to do are probably two different questions. It is, again, possible to limit what it can do based off of the permissions that the user that you give the AI has. But there are some things it cannot do. Some of those things I intend to create tools that it will be able to do. Some of those things probably don't make sense. So, for example, it doesn't work with widgets. But to be honest, most WordPress sites don't really use widgets nowadays. So it's not a tool that I've built in here, but that doesn't mean it's not a tool that some other plugin hasn't added. And that's the thing about this tooling, right, is that any plugin has the ability to create their own endpoint to plug into your AI tool, and then it can interact just with the tools that plugin has added. This plugin is intended to be very generic and very kind of broad strokes, where you can come in and say, I want to set up a site, please install XYZ, configure it this way, set the time zone, all those kinds of things. And then let's see, what other questions we have. Can it help site loading bottlenecks and suggest ways to fix long load times? So, and that's where you may not necessarily need to have an MCP necessarily to do that. So just as a heads up, if you're using Claude Desktop, well, I think you have to have, so there's kind of three tools that they give you. There's chat, there's co-work, and code. If you're a developer, you can use code. Chat is kind of the same chat interface that you get in the online version, right? You ask your question, it gives you an answer. Maybe it can generate a file or something like that for you that you can download. But co-work is designed to be a lot more functional in what it can do. So, for example, it has the ability to connect to your Chrome instance and actually load tabs, look at the website in the actual browser, suggest things, look at the markup, kind of do those types of things. And so you could also have it go to the website where it does the performance checks and have it tell you what's the most important thing you should be doing right now for performance. And maybe even go ahead and do that for you because you've connected this to your site, depending on whether that's add a performance plugin or configure the performance plugin a particular way. Those are all types of things that you could theoretically have it do. But also, Claude Desktop, if you enable it, it has something called computer use, where you can actually have it use applications on your computer just like you would. So it's very powerful. So even if you don't have the MCP, if you just enabled the Claude code integration for Chrome, then it technically could go to your site. You could log in on behalf of it, and it could just go click around and do things for you. But obviously, that will take a lot more time and a lot more kind of token usage, because screenshots are never the optimal way of communicating with the AI. It's text is better. And so these tools give it the text interface that make it a lot quicker. So jumping back over here, just kind of go through some of the other slides. So we installed the plugin, we generated the password, we configured, so that was that copy pasting into the configuration file. And then, there we go. So then testing the connection. And again, a lot of times the first thing you ask it to do, don't ask it to delete or update things. Just start with, tell me about this. What are the posts I have? How many comments do I have? Those kinds of things. And then you can kind of work your way into, let's modify, let's change things from there. And then, using real workflows, which is, again, we've given a few examples of that. But a big part of this is just getting in the habit of actually using it. I think a lot of people get so used to doing things by hand that when you have a tool that can just do it for you, sometimes you forget to actually leverage it. So building the habit of just, even if it doesn't save you a lot of time initially, just get in the habit of, let me try it with the AI and see how that works. And then, the more comfortable you get with it, the more likely that thought pops in your head as you're working with it. Hey, I should go use it. And then once you get to where you're using it regularly, that's when you really, really can start to scale it and use it with various sites. Now, let's say if you do have multiple WordPress sites and you want to connect to one versus another, and you don't want to confuse the AI, it does have the ability for you to kind of see the connectors and things that you have. And so here you can see ours is just labeled WordPress, and that's because the configuration here that I added, it just says WordPress. It's literally using that. That's configurable. If you just wanted to change that to the domain of the site or something like that, you could do that. And then when you're in here, if you decide, hey, I want to not use this site, I want to use another site, you can turn this one off and turn another one on. And that way you can kind of control and flip the switch and say, okay, well, I'm not working with a site, I'm working with this specific site. And that way, if you do configure multiple WordPress sites, you can control which one it's communicating with, and you don't accidentally make a change on some other person's site in the process. So let's see. So protecting it with permissions, we kind of alluded to, where you have a dedicated user account. And when you set up that WordPress user, maybe you just give it editor access. If your primary use case is content creation, you can set up a user that can create drafts that are or posts that require pending review, and then you could go in and review those and publish them if they look good. Or you can up the permissions that AI has and allow it to do its own publishing if it's an editor versus an author or contributor. So you can kind of control those things. And again, there's other plugins that also often will have different user roles and things. There's a plugin called I think it's just called permissions, and it allows you to assign multiple user roles. So again, if you had a particular role from this plugin and particular role from that plugin, you could combine them and kind of control what the AI user can do. But it also lets you configure specific permissions. So if you said, I want it to have admin-like permissions, but I don't want it to be able to do X, you could literally just go in and say, disallow this one permission, and then the AI is no longer able to do that. So just like you would manage a normal WordPress user permissions, you can do the same thing with AI and just give it access to what it needs. And with these application passwords, it's a good idea to rotate them just like you would change your normal password, which I know a lot of people don't do, but it is a good practice for security. And then, kind of reviewing the activity logs. And again, the activity logs in the plugin that I created are minimal from a AI standpoint, but I do recommend that you find an activity log plugin that you like that can track other things as well. So a few things to kind of avoid. Make sure that the first thing you do when you set it up is you test it to see if it's working. And then, make sure you use the correct user account. Don't ask for too much at one time. That often will confuse the AI because well, I've talked about this in another presentation, but we have the idea of task frames or types of things that we ask the AI to do, like analyze or decide. If you're trying to ask it to analyze something and then decide and then generate all in one step, you're asking too much. So it's better to have it analyze and then have it generate, or whatever the steps are there. Just kind of split up the task a little bit so that you don't confuse the AI or make it decide to use the wrong tools in the wrong order. So the logically thinking through how would I ask someone to do this is a good thing to do. And then don't forget activity logs. And again, that's one of those things where with any WordPress site, pre-AI, I would tell people, just knowing what's happening on your site is important, especially if you have more than one user there. So having those activity log plugins help with that. But when you're throwing AI in the mix, you definitely want to be able to track what it's doing as well. And then, just don't treat it like a chatbot, because again, the real power is in the AI being able to act on your behalf to do things on the site. And so that's where your real benefit comes from. So this is kind of the steps we went through. We chose our AI host, in this case, Claude, set up the site, tested it. we actually used it for some things. And then for the protection, again, this being a test site, we just gave it admin access. But again, think through your use cases and what you do want it to do and don't want it to do. But also properly leverage the permissions that you give it when you're working with the AI. Always allow read access, allow once for anything where it's actually changing things on your site. But yeah, so that's kind of a summary there. Oh, so this is what I call my trust checklist. So making sure that all of these things are taken care of from a security standpoint. So any tokens, or in this case, our application password, we should throw that in a password manager so that it's secure and where we can find it when we need it. We don't want to put it into a Google Doc or something that gets shared on a file sharing system. That, if that ever got hacked, you would lose. People would be able to find your passwords. And then for the user roles, again, make sure you've gotten that figured out. The user confirmations, which you've seen, where we're doing the always allow, sometimes allow, making sure that you think through that each time just to make sure that it's doing the right thing. And then the scope, make sure it kind of fits with the roles, but you can get real fine grained with it. It's not necessarily have to be role specific. There are, as I mentioned, ways to control specific things that the AI can do for a particular user. And then the trail. So it's knowing what happened is a big part of being able to trust the system, as well as debug when things might go wrong. This is a recap of basically what we covered. So where are we headed with this type of thing in WordPress? I think we're going to start to see a lot more plugins adding these abilities for AI to interact with it. I will be interested to see, because to me, the real benefit of connecting the AI is just being able to connect it to one MCP server or a collection of tools, essentially, and not have. If you have 10 plugins and they all have the MCP functionality, technically, you would have to register all 10 things in the configuration separately. Whereas the one I built tries to leverage the functionality via the API of other plugins. But it'll be interesting to see how WordPress handles multiple plugins, lots of tools. The more tools you have in a system, a lot of times the more confused that the AI might get about which one to use. So again, just a precaution in general when working with AI, don't overload it with so many things that, it just wastes your token usage with the AI, and also confuses the AI because you have so many things to pick from. AI gets decision fatigue a little bit like we do. And then
are you saying we shouldn't have 3 page builders on the same site? Is that?
That'd probably be a bad idea. Especially if the page builders all have their own MCPs and each MCP
right.
has 300 tools. And I think at the moment, somewhere around 50, 60 tools is reasonable for AI to kind of be able to grok and work with, a particular thing, which is about where I'm at with the tools that are available for this plugin. I'm actually going to be doing a little bit of reduction of that because there's some things I think we can slim down. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to kind of optimize this, and it'll be interesting to see what WordPress core, how they approach some of that. I think we're going to see a lot more WordPress hosts where they're actually providing some of this MCP functionality. I know Bluehost has some chat interfaces that are out/coming out that do have this functionality with WordPress. And then we have the the agency scale side of this, where this MCP tooling allows you to do more with more sites more quickly. And then essentially as we get a little bit more agentic, and it becomes a lot easier for common people using common AI tools to kind of create these scheduled tasks and things like that, I think we'll start to see a lot more people using this functionality to accomplish, kind of like a teammate, to accomplish certain things. So you might have a scheduled task that goes through a content publish flow or things like that. Can the AI tool replace N8N? So probably, yes. So again, Claude Desktop in general, they do have, well, again, if you're paying $20 a month, you get co-work and you get scheduled tasks. And so if you do scheduled tasks, that's the same as saying, okay, well, N8N, every week go do this, or every day go do that. I think there's probably some benefit to N8N in some scenarios, because again, I don't think all automation should just be AI automation. I think there's some benefit to saying, okay, we have an AI, we have an agentic flow, we have an AI automation, and then we just have a regular automation. So N8N can handle all three of those, whereas this is just going to be an AI automation. So, question.
We had a question right before that was, does each page builder need its own MCP?
So to be honest, I don't think I've seen a page builder with MCP yet. Well, I say that. Elementor has Angie, which is kind of their own chat interface, but it's not necessarily, well, I could be wrong, but I don't think they actually have an MCP that's externally available. But yeah, I would say as we start to see page builders coming out with these MCPs, you would probably have that connection for the page builder. You'd make that with the AI, and then your AI could then manipulate and work with pages. So, but again, I think we might be heading in a direction, because again, part of the reason that WordPress came up with the block editor is because we had so many page builders, and it was so, kind of a fragmented,
mess
approach to things. If you want to move from one builder to another, it was a lot of work. Whereas if we get to a place where the AI is now natively speaking WordPress block editor, and the block editor can do a lot of the same things, then I think that's where we may be able to just get away with a common interface that the AI can use for all content. Let's see. But yeah, so that's kind of the future looking thing. If you want to try some things out, choose your AI host. There's Claude Desktop. There's also Codex, which is kind of actually, I think you can have a free account and use Codex, and it has similar functionality as Cowork, where you can actually work and do things on your machine. But it also has the ability to connect via the MCP tools. So whatever tool you happen to be using, just look into how to integrate the MCP with that. And then, connect to site, run some prompts, and then, if you run into issues or if it all went well, I'd like to hear about it. And I guess as far as the the WordPress community goes, we actually have a WordPress community, Atlanta community Slack. If anyone's in there, you know, I am in there as well. But yeah, I think mostly open up the questions, or if we want to demo anything else.
Yeah, just if you guys have a question, just raise your hand, and then we'll let people ask. So feel free to turn your camera on too. And I was wrong. We did not get up to 23 people. We only got up to 19. So.
Oh. Oh well. So yeah, let's just jump back over here.
Here's got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, there's, of course, a large ecosystem of tools for WordPress. What does it mean for WordPress tool developers with this new AI approach? And what would you like to see with new AI-driven tools for WordPress? Thanks.
Well, the nice thing about this is that anything that a plugin can do, it can be registered as an ability in WordPress, and then that ability can be added to an MCP server. So any functionality in WordPress can technically be tied into, you know, the tooling that we're talking about today. I think, I mean, it's one of those things where we look at just the plugin ecosystem. There's such a wide variety of things that are out there. We've got the mainstream plugins like Gravity Forms or you know, Yoast or some of those things where you know, they're starting to do some of their own AI things to manage forms or to optimize posts or set up meta descriptions, things like that. And then you have those very nuanced plugins where, you know, maybe only 10 people install them, but it's super valuable to them because they run a underwater basket weaving program and need a special underwater geolocation plugin or whatever it is. So I think a lot of those kinds of things, again, you know, we'll see small plugins like that that'll add their own tools, and then large plugins. But so I think, you know, as varied as the functionality is, where you're actually just clicking around the admin interface, whatever, you know, the plugins that are out there give you, they can be configured with AI. And I think most plugins should, because again, you know, I think that's kind of the future. A lot of things are going to be done with AI as opposed to necessarily needing an interface. And the nice thing about some of these configurations here is that you can actually connect AI to your site. And so this is the configuration that my plugin provides is more of a local desktop app to remote site. But you can actually have a remote connection where if you're on your phone on Claude, you could type in something and have it go do something on a site. So I think there's going to be a lot of advancements in terms of how we interact with the AI, but also hopefully we'll start to see a lot more just plugins in general implementing it. Question.
Go ahead, Anna.
Hi, yeah. What would you say to someone who's kind of early in their career? I'm, you know, just getting my feet wet with WordPress in general. I'm very familiar with AI and everything. I have Claude and I have ChatGPT. My boss doesn't love it. You know, he's still a little, you know, worried about just letting AI drive, you know. But, you know, he wanted me to come to this call and everything. So I think that he's a little bit more open to it. And so for WordPress, and not the coding situation, just more of content creation, SEO, what would you like?
Yeah. So, and that's the beauty of it, right? Like I know there's a lot of tools that do the coding and do all that stuff, but for that average person, trying to just do a particular flow, publish content, post on social media, whatever it is. Those are all flows that can be automated with AI. So, yeah, I think, well, I would say, and again, if you're familiar with having a WordPress site using something like local WP where you can have it on your actual machine,
Right.
I would start with something like that where it's just safe to play around with, or if you have a remote site where it's just a test site, something just to get your feet wet, see what it can do, see what the risks are, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I think so there was a big debacle with SiteGround. I believe they enabled AI features across all of their customers by default without asking. And there's a lot of people that didn't like that. But
What could go wrong?
do it.
Well, what could go wrong?
Right. So yeah, I think there's something to be said about starting when you're ready, as opposed to just being thrown in and
Right.
not knowing the implications of having it there. So it's kind of like any workflow. You kind of have to think through what are the risks with it, where could it go wrong. So a lot of times, if we think outside of WordPress, we have N8N. We're setting up a workflow. Maybe it's like an email triage thing where I get an email and it's going to look at it and be like, is this spam? Is this important? Should I respond to it?
Right. We have HubSpot, so it does a little bit of that. There's some AI features within HubSpot that we use. I'm just, do what I'm told, but at the same time, I think that, enabling this plugin would be a little bit, dabbing too deep too early. But I'll go to my boss with the information I have, and we'll go from there. But this has been like really very helpful.
Yeah. And well, like I was saying with the email triage, if for example somebody sent you an email and it had a hidden prompt in there, well, guess what's going to happen when it goes through your workflow is it's going to, so you gotta have to think through what are the points where someone could eject something. If I'm responding to a comment in WordPress, well, what if that comment is essentially additional instructions for the AI to do something malicious? So,
yeah,
a lot of things to
think about.
But I think one of the features that I'll probably be adding to this plugin is the ability in WordPress directly to enable or disable a particular set of tools. So if you said, hey, I'm fine with read-only access to my site so I can just understand what's going on, or the SEO, what could be done better, things like that. Being able to have that fine-grained control of what it can and can't do, I think is the key to the future of being able to properly trust it.
Right, exactly, yeah. Because that's what, I need to kind of see that up and kind of make sense of AI to, someone that isn't really loving the idea of AI in general. But, it really does. It's so helpful, and it's insane where it's going, so.
Yeah. I definitely see. Go ahead.
I was just saying it just saves a lot of time. When it works, it saves a lot of time.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I use it for social media, captions, and I go back and forth with it. So, I mean, I utilize it as much as I can, and but I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah. All right. Have any other questions?
Does not look like it, but so we'll have another meetup. I scheduled one next month and then following month just to keep this going. Most of the meetups, at least in the near future, it's going to be AI focus, just because it's changing. I mean, this is a WordPress meetup, but I think AI is affecting WordPress dramatically, and so we're going to keep trying to go down this path as things change. I mean, it changes every week, so it's pretty interesting. So, but all right, I will. I guess I'm gonna. Are there any other questions? We're good. All right, I'm gonna stop. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Micah.
I don't see any more in the chat. So
Okay, cool. I will call it quits then. So thank you, everybody. I'm gonna stop now.